Thank you, Swati. And thank you for having us over here. It's been a brilliant, eye-opening experience. Uh, I'm going to share my screen, and please let me know if you can see it. Yes, is my screen visible? Uh, just a thumbs up would do. I'm not sure if you can see it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we are basically called DGO. We are Data and Evidence for Justice Reform. And I'm going to quickly start with uh, a point of Lok Adalat and what we have done in this respect, right? So let's take this as an example of what is happening in the ecosystem and where evaluation could be effective. So currently, in the case of Maharashtra, if you look at the number of cases which are pending in the district courts of Maharashtra, the cases that are potentially fit for Lok Adalat have been pending on average for more than 250 days. Uh, Obviously, this kind of pendency leads to cases which have been pending, which are not fit for Lok Adalat, also pending for a longer duration. Now, what can be done in this regard is, let's say, if you move into the mechanism of understanding how do you increase resolution and how do you increase settlement in case of uh, cases that don't necessarily need to land into courts and can be handled with ADR. What we do is, let's say, we start studying different stages of Lok Adalat. We start understanding what is happening in Lok Adalat. We from there create evidence for strengthening those stages. We figure out what are the leakages, where is it can be more effective, and we figure out those stages. And from there we implement those evidence in Lok Adalat. And that through that we create a loop of generating, creating, and implementing the evidence in case of Lok Adalat. But obviously, what this leads to is answering more important questions, which is not just specifically about Lok Adalat, but also about general, which is about what cases are fit for Lok Adalat, when is pre-counseling effective, and what are the mechanisms that should exist for pre-counseling? How should counselors be allocated cases? And if you start answering these questions, you would see that there's a possibility of increasing settlement by a huge margin. Now, when we're talking about Lok Adalat right now, we don't have to necessarily focus only on Lok Adalat. We can take any solution. It could be mediation shells. It could be training of paralegal volunteers, panel lawyers. It could also be legal aid clinics. It could also be telelaw. It could be Nyaya Bandhu. It could be any possible mechanism the government is thinking of. And thinking of how can you start entering those places to understand what is the most effective strategy to move forward. Now, why this is important is mostly because we are a resource constrained society. We don't have a thousands of crores of rupees to implement all the possible things that are out there. We have to prioritize, and prioritization requires creating evidence for what works and what will be the most effective way to move forward. And what DGO can do in that regard is create evidence for the causal impact for each of those strategies that the government wants to implement or even other partners are thinking of implementing. I'll quickly do a plugin of what DJO does in this, right? What we do is we work on creating a global platform for expanding what works in justice. We create indicators of impact, its efficiency, quality of access to justice, mental well-being, economic growth, and we create indicators that match that allow us to capture the impact from the beginning, that is input to the outcome, which could be economic growth or could also be access to justice. And from there, how do we do it? We use emerging and innovative technology like machine learning and AI. And we have been working with we have been working with different partners in the ecosystem to develop those tools to understand how can the impact be maximized. I'm going to pause on that. Obviously, happy to answer any questions. But I think the idea that I want to throw and think about is how do you create evidence and how do you make decisions based on evidence before jumping into a solution that that most probably is effective based on anecdotes, but at a scale as big as India, what are the five things you want to prioritize and how do you prioritize that? And that's where we can come in.